your medical bag! This seat belongs to me!
Stop!
That's connected to my chest!
Take your hand off my wife, now. I trained the pilots flying this aircraft.
The alarm from row 12 did not sound like a seatbelt warning. It sounded like something inside a human body had just gone wrong. It came in 3 sharp bursts above the hum of North Meridian Flight 620. Heads turned before anyone understood why. Naomi Brooks sat into 12C with one hand pressed beneath her left collarbone. A red stain spread through the white dressing beneath her blouse. On the floor, a compact medical bag lay on its side, its tubing stretched tight. The strap was still looped around Diane Harrow's fingers. Diane stood beside 11C, twisted halfway around toward Naomi. She looked irritated, not frightened. "I moved it because nobody else was willing to," she said. Tessa Cole rose from 12D. "Let go of the bag." Diane blinked. "I already did." "Your hand is still on it." Diane released the strap. Tessa knelt beside Naomi and examined the connection. "I'm an R nurse. I need space and a first aid kit now." Naomi tried to nod, but the motion tightened her face. "It burned," she whispered, then it pulled. The implanted port beneath Naomi's skin appeared stable, but the external connector had shifted and the securing tape had torn loose. "The port may still be intact," Tessa said. "The connection is compromised. She needs a hospital as soon as we can get her on the ground." Heather Sloan hurried from the forward galley. Her service smile vanished when she saw the blood, yet her first question was not for Naomi. She turned to Diane. "Mom, what happened?" Diane seized the opening. "That bag was pressing against my seat. I asked her to move it. She refused. I only pulled it into the aisle so someone could deal with it." "She told you not to touch it," said a man across the aisle. Diane ignored him. "I had no way of knowing it was attached to her." Naomi closed her eyes for 1 second. Not from pain alone. Something quieter crossed her face, the exhausted recognition of hearing herself rewritten while she was still bleeding. Tessa pressed fresh gauze near the dressing. "Notify the cockpit," she said. Heather hesitated. "Let's first determine whether this is something we can manage here." Isaiah Brooks returned from the galley carrying warm water. He stopped at row 12. His gaze moved across the scene. Blood on Naomi's blouse, the medical bag on the floor, Diane's hand hovering where the strap had been. Heather turned partly away from the person who needed help. He did not shout. He did not touch Diane. He did not announce his name or position. He stepped into the row and knelt beside his wife. "Naomi, look at me." Her eyes found his. "I'm here." He rested one hand on her forearm, careful not to disturb Tessa's work. Then he asked 3 questions, each quiet and exact. "Is the implanted port intact?" Tessa nodded. "It appears to be." "What is the immediate risk?" "Contamination, bleeding, possible infection." "The external connector is damaged." Isaiah's jaw tightened. "How long before she needs a hospital?" "Not hours," Tessa said. "Soon." Heather shifted her weight. "Sir, I understand you're concerned, but I need everyone to remain calm." Isaiah looked up at her. His face held no anger she could point to, only a steadiness that made her voice sound less certain. "Call the cockpit," he said. "This is no longer a seating complaint." 2 rows back, Flight Attendant Maya Benton paused with the first aid kit. She had heard the phrasing, the order of the questions, the way Isaiah separated medical facts from cabin conflict. She studied him for 1 second longer than she meant to. He spoke like someone who knew what happened next. She just did not know why. 76 minutes earlier, Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport was still wrapped in gray morning light. Naomi Brooks stood near gate B-19, with one hand resting over her medical bag and the other holding a folder thick with documents. Inside were her physician's letter, the device safety sheet, North Meridian's medical approval, her seat confirmation, and the name of the agent who had cleared the equipment 3 days earlier. Every page had been printed twice. Isaiah watched her check them again. "I could have worn my uniform," he said. He kept his voice light, but Naomi heard the concern beneath it. "It might have made this easier." She closed the folder. "My ticket should not become more valid because of your uniform." Isaiah looked at her, then nodded. He knew better than to argue when fear and principle met in her voice. Naomi taught adults how to read at a neighborhood learning center in southwest Atlanta. Some of her students had spent years pretending they understood lease agreements, job applications, medical forms, and bank letters, because signing blind felt safer than admitting they needed help. She always told them the same thing. Understanding a document was the first step towards stopping someone else from taking your choices away. That morning, she had every paper. She had made every call. She had followed every instruction. Yet the folder felt less like proof than a shield she already knew someone might test. Harborline Cancer Institute in Boston had offered her a place in a new treatment program after months of uneven results. The treatment window was narrow, and losing that appointment could cost Naomi her place in the program. North Meridian's medical desk had reviewed the portable infusion pump, which was delivering supportive medication prescribed to keep Naomi stable until Harborline could begin the new protocol. The airline approved the battery pack, marked her reservation, and assigned her a seat with clear access to the aisle. Naomi and Isaiah arrived nearly 2 hours early, so no employee would have to rush. At 7:18 a.m., the gate agent invited passengers needing additional boarding time to come forward. Naomi stepped into the priority lane. Diane Harrow, standing several places back in a cream coat, looked up from her phone. Her eyes moved from Naomi's face to the medical bag, then to the boarding sign. "Do medical exceptions move people ahead of paying passengers now?" she asked. The gate agent gave a practiced smile. "She has approved medical equipment that needs to be secured before general boarding." Diane glanced at Isaiah, then back at Naomi. "Some people always know which exception to use." She said it softly, but not softly enough. Naomi felt the words land and remain there. Isaiah shifted beside her. She touched his wrist once. Not now. Inside the aircraft door, Heather Sloan waited with a tablet. The medical authorization was already highlighted on her screen. Yet, she asked Naomi to open the folder. Naomi did. Heather read the physician's letter, then asked how long the pump needed to run, whether it could be disconnected during takeoff, and whether the bag could go in an overhead bin. Naomi answered each question and explained that the device remained connected to her body and had to stay within reach. Heather glanced at the approval code again. "I'm just making sure we understand everything," she said. Naomi held her gaze. "My ticket is valid. My medical clearance is valid." "What exactly are you still checking?" Heather's mouth tightened. "We're responsible for everyone's safety." "Then the record should be enough," Naomi said. No accusation, no raised voice, just a sentence Heather had no clean answer for. She stepped aside and allowed them through. As Naomi walked toward row 12, Diane stopped at the aircraft door and leaned closer to Heather. "You may want to make sure she actually belongs in that section." Heather did not correct her. She looked down at the tablet and checked Naomi's name one more time. Naomi settled into 12C, in the wider front section of the main cabin. Isaiah took 12B. Beneath the seat ahead, the infusion pump rested inside a reinforced medical bag, secured with the airline-approved strap Heather had watched Naomi fasten. The tubing curved upward without tension and disappeared beneath the edge of Naomi's blouse. Nothing blocked the aisle. Nothing touched the seat ahead. Diane Harrow sat in 11C. Before the boarding door closed, she pressed the call button. Heather arrived wearing the same polished expression. Diane pointed over her shoulder. "That machine is going to beep the entire flight, isn't it?" Naomi looked up from her folder. "It only alerts if something changes, so it does make noise." Diane turned to Heather. "I have work to do. Move her farther back." Heather glanced toward the rows behind them. Several seats remained open. She did not suggest that Diane use one. Instead, she crouched beside Naomi. "Could the pump be paused for a few hours?" "No." "Could you push the bag deeper under the seat?" "The tubing has to remain loose. There may be space in the last few rows," Heather said. "It might be more comfortable for everyone." Naomi's fingers tightened around the folder. "Everyone?" Heather's smile held. The surrounding passengers. Across the aisle, Tessa Cole had been listening. "She is right about the tubing," she said. "If that pump is connected, you do not compress the line or move the unit where she cannot reach it." Heather looked at her. "And you are?" "An emergency nurse." Maya Benton approached from the forward galley and checked the strap beneath Naomi's seat. "Her medical clearance is in the reservation," she said. The bag is secure. It is not a safety issue. For a moment, the matter should have ended there. Diane made sure it did not. She released a long breath and looked directly at Maya. The moment anyone questions a black passenger, everyone acts like it must be discrimination. She sounded certain the room would find her reasonable. Naomi turned slowly. Diane lifted one hand. I'm talking about rules, not race. Naomi studied her face. No anger showed, only a quiet alertness. Then apply the same rule to both of us, Naomi said. If either passenger is uncomfortable, offer either passenger another seat. Don't decide in advance which one of us should move. Maya looked toward the open seats Diane had ignored. Heather straightened. No one is deciding anything in advance. I'm asking for cooperation if the equipment becomes disruptive. Naomi glanced at the bag. It has not been disruptive. Heather's mouth tightened. Let's keep it that way. She walked off before Naomi could answer. Isaiah had remained silent. He knew how much effort that silence cost Naomi, and he also knew she had asked for it. She wanted the ticket, the approval, and the facts to be enough. As the aircraft door closed, Diane turned around twice. During the safety demonstration, she looked back again. When the pump gave a soft confirmation tone, barely louder than a phone notification, Diane shook her head toward Heather. The aircraft pushed away from the gate. Naomi rested her palm over the medical bag and watched the terminal slide past. Isaiah leaned closer. Still want me to stay out of it? Yes, she said, then softened. Unless it becomes about safety. He nodded. The engines rose. Atlanta fell away beneath them. Once Flight 620 leveled off, the pump sounded another brief tone. Diane pressed the call button before it had fully stopped. Heather appeared. Diane pointed toward Naomi without looking at her. Either move that equipment or move her. Heather followed the gesture down. The bag remained secured within Naomi's foot space beneath the seat ahead, its tubing loose and clear of the aisle. She studied it for several seconds, though nothing had changed since Maya inspected it. Could you slide it farther forward? Heather asked. Naomi followed her gaze. No, the line has the correct amount of slack now. Moving the bag would pull against the connection. Heather's expression tightened as if Naomi had rejected a favor rather than explained a medical limit. I'm trying to find a solution. There is no safety problem to solve, Naomi said. There is a passenger who does not like seeing my equipment. Diane turned sharply in 11C. I don't care what it looks like. I care that it is near my seat. Tessa leaned across the aisle to examine the tubing again. It is not touching your seat. She looked directly at Heather, then Diane. Do not touch or reposition it while it is connected. The warning was plain. No medical jargon. No room for misunderstanding. Diane gave a thin laugh. Everyone keeps acting as though this thing will explode if someone moves it an inch. Tessa's face remained still. It is connected to a port beneath her skin. That is why you do not move it. Diane looked at Naomi as though the explanation proved her point. Then she should not have brought something so complicated into a shared cabin. Naomi felt Isaiah shift beside her. She touched his hand without looking at him. He had promised to let her speak for herself unless the situation became unsafe. Heather turned toward Diane. Her voice softened. Mrs. Harrow, please remain facing forward. We'll keep monitoring the equipment. Then she looked back at Naomi. And I need you to cooperate if we have to adjust anything. Naomi heard the difference. Diane received reassurance. Naomi received a warning. I have cooperated since the gate, she said. Heather avoided her eyes and walked toward the galley. Isaiah watched her leave. I'm going to get you warm water, he said quietly. I'll be back in a minute, Naomi nodded. The cabin settled into the low rhythm of flight. Air moved through the vents. A service cart rattled behind them. Diane opened her laptop but kept glancing over her shoulder. Naomi tried to focus on the page in front of her, though the words blurred at the edges. The pump released a soft alert. Not an emergency alarm, a reminder tone telling Naomi to check the display. She leaned forward, one hand steadying the tubing while the other reached for the bag. Diane unbuckled, stepped into the aisle, and bent toward Naomi's footwell. There, that noise again. Naomi looked up. I'm checking it. Diane reached down and closed her fingers around the exposed strap. Then move it where no one else has to hear it. Naomi's body went rigid. Please don't touch that. Tessa saw the movement and stood. "Mom, let go of the device." Diane pulled once, the bag held. She pulled again, harder, tearing the retaining strap free from its Velcro anchor. The tubing snapped straight. Naomi felt a sharp, burning pressure beneath her collarbone. The external connector twisted against the dressing, then broke free from its fixed position. The pump screamed. Naomi caught her breath and pressed one hand against her chest. The cabin seemed to tilt around her. Tessa moved into the row before the bag finished falling. First aid kit. Gloves. Now, Maya turned from the galley and ran for the supplies. Diane released the strap at last. Heather hurried back from the forward galley, then stopped in the aisle when she saw the spreading red mark beneath Naomi's blouse. "I thought it was just a bag." Tessa looked up from Naomi. "You were told it was connected to her body." Diane's face hardened, not with guilt, but with the anger of someone whose explanation had failed. Then she should not have placed something that dangerous near another passenger. Naomi's breathing came short and controlled. Pain tightened her voice, but did not break it. She looked directly at Diane. "No, you wanted a different rule for me." At that moment Isaiah returned with the warm water. He saw the blood, the damaged connector, and Tessa's hands working over Naomi's chest. The cup slipped from his fingers and rolled beneath a seat. He crossed the aisle without touching Diane and dropped to his knees beside his wife. Diane still did not know that the quiet black man looking up at her had spent nearly 2 decades training the pilots responsible for bringing everyone aboard safely to the ground. Tessa worked with the clipped focus of someone who had learned long ago that panic wasted time. She pulled on gloves, stabilized the damaged connector, and covered the exposed area with sterile gauze while Maya wrapped a blood pressure cuff around Naomi's arm. The first reading made Tessa's mouth tighten, though she kept her voice level. "Stay with me, Naomi. Slow breaths." Naomi nodded. Her eyes dropped to the dark streak across Tessa's sleeve. "I'm sorry about your sleeve." Tessa glanced at the stain, then back at her. "You have nothing to apologize for." The answer seemed to reach somewhere deeper than the pain. Naomi's face softened for half a second, then tightened again. "Will Boston still take me?" she asked. Isaiah understood the question beneath the question. Harborline had warned them that the treatment window was narrow. A delay might mean new tests, another review, another week of waiting while her body kept its own schedule. "We're going to handle what's in front of us," he said. "Then we'll call Harborline." Naomi shook her head faintly. "That isn't an answer." "No," Isaiah said. "It isn't." He took her hand. Her fingers were cold. "Use your classroom exercise." Naomi looked at him through the strain. He pointed toward the cabin. 5 things you can see." She swallowed. "The exit sign, Maya's badge, your watch, the blue curtain, Tessa's gloves." "Good. Now read the placard in front of you." Naomi focused on the safety card attached to the seat back. "Life vest located beneath your seat." Her voice weakened on the last word. Isaiah kept his thumb against her knuckles. Again. "Breathe with the sentence." She tried once more, slower this time. Around them, the cabin had gone quiet enough for every word to carry. Naomi looked at him. "I followed every rule. Why am I still the one being explained?" Isaiah had no answer that would not sound smaller than the truth. He tightened his hand around hers. Heather stepped closer, tablet against her chest. "Sir, I need you to return to your seat. You're making this situation harder to manage." Isaiah looked up. He was still on one knee. He had not moved toward Diane. "I'm holding my wife's hand. You're also questioning crew decisions during an active incident." Maya turned from the medical kit. "He has not raised his voice." Heather's eyes flicked toward her. "I didn't say he had." She opened the tablet and began typing. Maya stood close enough to see the first line appear. "Female passenger became agitated during dispute involving personal equipment." "Why are you calling her agitated?" Maya asked. Heather continued typing. "I'm documenting the incident. She hasn't stood up. She hasn't shouted. She hasn't refused an instruction." Heather stopped. "We use neutral language." Naomi heard them. Her head turned slowly. "Read back what you wrote." Heather looked at her. "This is an internal report. You used a word about me while I'm sitting close enough to hear it. Read it." Heather's expression hardened. "Mom, right now you need to focus on your health." Naomi's breathing remained shallow, but her voice steadied. Calling me agitated is not neutral. It is a decision. 3 rows back, Jordan Miles raised his phone. He did not hide it beneath a magazine or pretend to check a message. He held it openly, camera pointed toward row 12. The frame captured Naomi seated with one hand in Isaiah's, Tessa securing the dressing, and Isaiah kneeling without blocking the aisle. It also captured Diane turning toward anyone who would listen. "She had that bag practically under my seat," Diane said. "Now they're acting as if I attacked her. Her husband has been staring at me this entire time." A passenger across the aisle answered, "He's been looking at his wife." Diane's face tightened. Maya took a blank incident form from the kit and wrote the time at the top. She recorded the original complaint, Tessa's warning, Naomi's request, Diane's hand on the strap, and the moment the connector pulled loose. Heather watched the pen move. "What are you doing?" "Creating a witness report." "I'm already filing the report." Maya did not look up. "Then there will be 2. She signed the bottom, then leaned toward Isaiah. "There will be an original record." Maya then used the cabin phone to relay Tessa's medical assessment to the cockpit while Heather continued typing. Heather stared at the paper in Maya's hand. For the first time since the alarm began, she understood her electronic version would not be the only account preserved. The cockpit received Tessa's assessment and relayed it to North Meridian's medical advisory team on the ground. For the next 25 minutes, Flight 620 continued north, while Captain Rachel Lawson and her first officer evaluated distance, weather, runway access, and nearby hospitals. In row 12, time moved differently. Tessa checked Naomi's pulse. Maya replaced the gauze. Isaiah stayed low beside his wife, one hand over hers. Diane Harrow had 25 minutes to stop talking. She did not. "I barely moved it," she said first, turning toward the passengers behind her, as though a jury had already formed. The bag was in the wrong place, and nobody else would do anything. Jordan kept recording. Diane changed her tone. Nothing was pulled from her body. "People are making this sound much worse than it was." Tessa looked up from Naomi's dressing. "The connection was displaced because you pulled the bag." Diane's mouth tightened. "That is your interpretation." "It is what happened," Tessa said. Denial had failed, so Diane reached for injury. "Her husband is standing over me and making me feel unsafe." Isaiah was still 1 row behind her, seated low beside Naomi, his shoulders turned away from Diane. A man in 13A looked from Isaiah to Diane. "He is not standing," he said. Diane ignored him. She leaned toward a woman across the aisle. "People like them know exactly which accusation will make everyone afraid to challenge them." Jordan's phone caught every word. The woman stiffened. "People like who?" Diane's face shifted. "I meant people who make everything about discrimination." "You brought up race before takeoff," Maya said. That opened the cabin. A passenger near row 10 spoke. "I heard her question whether Naomi belonged in this section." Another man added, "I heard the comment about medical exceptions." A third passenger said Diane had complained after every alert tone before the bag ever moved. Heather stepped toward Jordan. "Sir, stop recording. Other passengers have a right to privacy." Jordan lowered the phone only enough to meet her eyes. "I'm not blocking the aisle or interfering with care. I'm recording an incident with witnesses. I'm giving you a crew instruction." Maya looked at Heather. "You keep restricting the people she harmed. You have not restricted her." Heather's expression hardened. "That is not what I'm doing." Behind them, Diane continued explaining herself. Heather did not ask her to stop. At North Meridian's Operations Center, an employee opened the reservation linked to row 12. Because Isaiah had booked through his employee travel profile, his personnel number appeared beside his name. The information moved quietly to the cockpit. Rachel read the message twice. Isaiah Brooks, Senior Training Captain, 18 years with North Meridian. Member of the Passenger Safety Review Group. Her first officer looked over. "Do we tell the cabin?" Rachel shook her head. "No." She opened the line to operations. "His title changes nothing about the patient. We divert because she needs care." Richmond offered the best combination of distance, weather, and medical access. Rachel requested priority handling and turned the aircraft toward Richmond. The turn was gentle. Then the announcement sounded. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. We are diverting to Richmond due to a medical situation. Please remain seated and follow crew instructions. A murmur moved through the aircraft. Diane turned toward Heather. Hundreds of people are being delayed because she overreacted. Isaiah glanced at his watch and recorded the time on his phone. He did not answer. Diane did not know the cockpit had identified him. She did not know Rachel Lawson had chosen to keep that information private until Naomi was safely on the ground. She still believed the loudest version of events would become the official one. After the captain announced the diversion, the cabin changed. Passengers who had spent the first part of the flight pretending not to watch began offering names, phone numbers, and seat assignments. A retired auditor in 13D opened a notebook and reconstructed the sequence minute by minute. A business traveler uploaded Jordan's video to a private cloud folder. Tessa finished her medical notes, marking when the tubing had been displaced, Naomi's first blood pressure reading, and the diversion announcement. Diane watched the evidence organize itself around her. Until then, she had treated the cabin like a room she could control by speaking first and longest. Now the story had timestamps, it had witnesses, it had copies. Her voice changed. "I'm willing to apologize for a misunderstanding," she said, smoothing her jacket. "But I will not be treated like I deliberately hurt anyone." Isaiah looked up from Naomi's hand. "When the nurse told you not to touch it, what did you think she meant?" Diane's face tightened. She looked toward Heather instead of answering. "Why are you letting him interrogate me?" Heather stepped closer. "Mr. Brooks, do not address Ms. Harrow directly. We need to keep the cabin calm." Maya turned toward her. "She has been talking about Naomi for 20 minutes. He asked one question." Heather's eyes flicked toward the passengers. "This is not the time for an argument." "Then why was it the time for her version?" Maya asked. Heather opened her mouth, but no clear answer came. Isaiah did not press. He returned his attention to Naomi, waited until Tessa finished checking the dressing, then asked Maya to lean closer. "Preserve the current electronic report before any edits. Keep your paper statement separate. Save the medical clearance attached to Naomi's reservation, the call button log, the time the cabin contacted the cockpit, the medical advisory recording, and the names of every passenger volunteering as a witness." Heather stared at him. The request was too exact to be instinct. Isaiah had named both the records that existed and the records that could reveal later changes. "The call button log isn't available in the cabin," Heather said. "Operations can retain it," Isaiah replied. "The report revision history, too." Something moved across Heather's face. Not recognition yet. Unease. Maya studied him. "Do you work in aviation?" Isaiah looked at Naomi before answering. Her eyes were closed, but her fingers still rested around his. "Today I'm her husband." He did not call an executive. He did not threaten anyone's job. He did not announce his rank or ask the crew to treat him differently. He only watched the facts and made sure they had somewhere to live. "Preserve the record before anyone improves the story," he said. Diane heard him and gave a dry laugh. "He thinks writing things down makes him important." No one answered her. The silence was not empty. It was judgment withheld until the evidence was complete. Outside the windows, the cloud layer thinned. Richmond appeared below in patches of highway, warehouse roofs, and pale morning light. The aircraft began its descent. Seatbacks clicked upright. Belts tightened. Tessa secured Naomi's medical bag where she could reach it without pulling the line. Isaiah remained beside her until Maya reminded him to take his seat for landing. He did so without protest, keeping one hand extended between them. Diane looked through the window and saw the runway drawing closer. She adjusted her coat, lifted her chin, and glanced toward the cockpit door. She still believed the captain would emerge to control Isaiah. She had not yet considered that the person being watched might be her. Flight 620 touched down in Richmond with a hard, clean thud. Reverse thrust rose through the cabin, then faded as the aircraft turned toward the gate. Through the windows, passengers could see an ambulance, an airport medical team, and 2 North Meridian security officers waiting beneath the white terminal lights. Diane Harrow noticed them too. She straightened her cream coat, smoothed one hand over her hair, and sat taller in 11C. The movement carried the old confidence of someone who still believed authority would recognize her version first. Around her, no one spoke. Naomi sat with her head against the seatback, one hand beneath the dressing at her collarbone. Isaiah remained beside her, his face still, his eyes fixed on the aircraft door. When the seatbelt sign went dark, no passenger stood. Maya had already asked everyone to remain seated until the medical team boarded. Then the cockpit door opened. Captain Rachel Lawson stepped into the cabin, wearing a dark uniform, 4 gold stripes bright against her shoulders. Diane turned toward her at once. Rachel did not look at her. She walked past row 11 and stopped beside Naomi. "Ms. Brooks, I'm Captain Lawson." Naomi opened her eyes. Rachel looked at Tessa. "Current condition?" "Stable for now," Tessa said. "The implanted port appears intact, but the external connection was displaced. She needs hospital evaluation and infection precautions." Rachel nodded. "The medical team boards first. No one else moves until she is off safely." She thanked Tessa, then stepped aside as 2 paramedics entered with a transport chair and sealed equipment bags. Diane watched Rachel prioritize Naomi's care and defer to Tessa's medical judgment. Her confidence began to fracture. Naomi was lifted carefully into the chair. Isaiah gathered the medical bag and folder without letting the tubing pull. Only after the paramedics secured Naomi did Rachel turn back toward row 11. "Ms. Harrow, remain seated. Airport authorities and our security team need to speak with you." Diane stared at her. "For moving a bag?" Rachel's expression did not change. "For touching an approved medical device after being told not to, causing an injury, and continuing to interfere while care was being provided. That is not what happened." Diane looked around for support. No one met her eyes. "It was an accident. No one told me she had some special connection to this airline." Rachel held her gaze. What relationship would have made the warning clearer? Diane's lips parted. "I mean, nobody told me who they were." The cabin seemed to draw tighter around the sentence. Rachel waited a beat before answering. "Isaiah Brooks is a senior training captain with North Meridian Air. He has trained pilots across this fleet and served on our passenger safety review group." Diane turned toward Isaiah so quickly her shoulder struck the seat. The anger left her face first, then the certainty. What remained was fear shaped like surprise. "I didn't know who your wife was." The paramedics had begun moving Naomi toward the door. She raised one hand. "Please stop." The chair paused in the aisle. Naomi turned her head toward Diane. Her face was pale, her voice tired, but every word carried. "You knew I was a passenger. You knew I was receiving treatment. You knew I asked you not to touch me. What else did you need to know?" No one applauded. No one cheered. The silence was heavier than celebration. A passenger near row 13 whispered, "She's right." Isaiah looked at Diane. "My uniform should not be the first reason you believe her." Rachel turned to Heather. "You will remain on board after the other passengers deplane. Your electronic report does not match the witness statements or the recorded video." Heather's face drained. "Captain, I documented what I understood at the time." "Then we will review what you understood and when you understood it." Diane was escorted off separately to provide a statement. Naomi was taken directly to the ambulance, Isaiah walking beside her with one hand on the transport chair. Later, inside the quiet aircraft, an investigator placed Jordan's video on Heather's tablet. The footage showed Naomi seated, speaking softly, never rising, never threatening anyone. He paused the recording and asked, "Where exactly does she become agitated?" Heather stared at the frozen image. She could not find a moment that had never existed. At Richmond Memorial Hospital, a vascular specialist cleaned the damaged site, replaced the external connector, and confirmed that the implanted port had not torn loose beneath Naomi's skin. It was the first piece of good news she had received since the alarm sounded. The relief did not erase the consequences. The broken connection had exposed the area to contamination, so Naomi needed preventive medication, repeated blood work, and several hours of observation. Harborline Cancer Institute agreed to hold her place, but the Boston treatment would begin one day later than scheduled. Naomi lay beneath a thin hospital blanket while Isaiah stood near the window, speaking quietly with the treatment coordinator. When he ended the call, she studied his face. "They're still taking me." "Tomorrow morning." Naomi closed her eyes. The breath she released trembled at the end. Across town, Airport investigators separated every person involved before taking statements. Tessa provided medical notes with exact times. Maya submitted her handwritten report and identified the moment Heather's description stopped matching what had happened. Jordan transferred the original video file rather than a compressed copy. Isaiah gave a factual account without mentioning his position until the investigator asked directly. Heather said she had been trying to control an escalating cabin. Diane maintained that she had moved a bag without understanding the risk. Passengers from 6 nearby rows described the same sequence. Diane complained before takeoff, ignored a medical warning, pulled the strap after Naomi asked her to stop, then blamed Naomi while she received care. Jordan waited until the aircraft had landed before posting the footage. The blood was not what spread fastest. The most shared clip began with Diane saying, "The moment anyone questions a black passenger, everyone acts like it must be discrimination." It ended with Naomi, pale and seated beneath the cabin lights, answering Heather's report. "Calling me agitated is not neutral. It is a decision." In 48 hours, the video approached 4 million views. Viewers slowed the footage, compared timestamps, and noticed details Heather's report had blurred. Naomi never stood. Isaiah never moved toward Diane, and Maya had warned the crew that the device was already approved. Diane's event company issued a statement describing the incident as a private misunderstanding. 2 major clients placed contracts worth a combined $1.8 million on hold. Her business partners removed her from day-to-day authority while they reviewed whether her conduct violated their client standards. Prosecutors opened a case concerning interference with medical equipment and resulting injury. Diane was interviewed and released while the investigation continued. There was no public arrest in the aisle, no dramatic display designed for cameras. The evidence moved more slowly than outrage, but it moved with greater weight. North Meridian suspended Heather from passenger service. Internal records showed she had opened Naomi's medical clearance before boarding. They showed she asked Naomi to move the device despite finding no safety violation. The report history showed the word agitated appeared before Naomi refused any crew instruction. A later revision, entered after the diversion began, softened Diane's action from pulled medical bag to attempted repositioning of passenger property. Maya's paper report prevented the change from becoming the only official memory. The airline placed her under whistleblower protection after she reported concern about retaliation. Reporters tried to turn the story into a reveal about Isaiah's rank. He declined interviews. His only written statement contained 3 sentences. "My wife was not entitled to dignity because she married a captain. Her ticket and her humanity had already settled that question." The failure began when those things were treated as insufficient. Naomi did not demand that everyone lose a job. From her hospital room, she sent North Meridian 3 requests. Reports had to describe observable behavior rather than labels such as agitated, aggressive, or difficult without evidence. Employees could not ask passengers to disconnect or reposition approved medical equipment without qualified guidance. Crew members who filed independent accounts needed a protected channel outside the authority of the person writing the primary report. During the internal hearing, investigators played the cabin video beside Heather's report. The recording stopped at an early moment, before the injury, when Heather reassured Diane and treated Naomi's approved equipment as the source of the inconvenience. No one could identify a moment when Heather had shown Naomi the same concern she had shown Diane. 9 months after Flight 620 diverted to Richmond, Naomi Brooks completed her final treatment at Harborline Cancer Institute. The news arrived without music, cameras, or a dramatic speech. A physician entered the examination room, placed the latest results on the desk, and told Naomi she could begin rebuilding the parts of her life treatment had forced her to pause. Isaiah sat beside her. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Naomi touched the edge of the paper, then laughed once through tears she had not planned to shed. By early fall, she returned to the Adult Literacy Center in southwest Atlanta. Her hair had grown back short and soft. A small scar remained beneath her collarbone, visible only when the neckline of her blouse shifted. She did not hide it, but she did not make it the center of every conversation either. It belonged to her history, not her identity. The criminal case ended in a negotiated resolution that required supervision and community accountability work. A separate civil settlement covered Naomi's medical costs and related losses. Diane's business partners required her to step away from leadership at her event company. She released a statement describing the incident as the worst mistake of her life. Naomi read it once and set it aside. A statement could admit consequences without proving understanding. Whether Diane had learned to see people differently or had only learned the price of being recorded remained unanswered. Heather Sloan did not return as lead flight attendant. The investigation transferred her away from direct passenger service after additional training and review. The final report made a distinction North Meridian could no longer avoid. Heather's failure did not begin when Naomi was injured. It began at the aircraft door, when the airline's own system confirmed Naomi's ticket and medical approval. Yet Heather decided the documents were still not enough. She had trusted Diane's discomfort before Naomi's evidence. Everything after that followed the first decision. North Meridian committed $2.5 million over 3 years to a program called Travel with Dignity. The reforms included medical device training, bias reviews for service decisions, behavior-based incident reporting, second manager approval before removing a passenger from an assigned seat during non-safety disputes, and protected channels for employees who submitted independent accounts. The company also removed vague labels from its reporting templates unless an employee could attach a specific action, quotation, or refusal. Naomi and Isaiah directed $500,000 from the civil settlement and airline contributions into a travel fund for adults who had to cross state lines for specialized treatment. Naomi insisted the application remain short. No personal essay, no demand that someone display private pain to prove need. At the first Travel with Dignity training session, more than 200 pilots, flight attendants, gate agents, and managers filled a conference room near Atlanta. Naomi stood at the front without Isaiah beside her. She had asked him to sit in the audience. On the screen behind her were only 2 documents: her boarding pass for Seat 12C and North Meridian's approval for the Infusion pump. She did not show Diane's face. She did not replay the alarm or the blood on her blouse. "Everything they needed to respect me was already on those 2 pages, Naomi said. Everything else was an excuse not to. No one applauded immediately. The silencers told her they had heard the sentence before deciding how to respond. That mattered more. Later that week, Naomi sat beside Walter Green, a 62-year-old warehouse worker preparing his first written job application. He moved slowly through the cover letter, tracing each line with one finger. Halfway through the word reliable, he stopped. His shoulders tightened. He looked toward Naomi, waiting for her to rescue him from the silence. She did not read the word for him. She did not hurry him or turn his hesitation into proof that he did not belong in the room. She smiled and said, "Take your time. Your voice still belongs in the room." Walter tried again. The first attempt broke apart. The second came closer. On the third, he read the full sentence without help. Naomi remained beside him, listening until he reached the period. That patience was all she had asked for aboard Flight 620. Not special treatment, not the protection of a powerful husband, not a better seat than anyone else. Only the right to present her documents, speak in her own voice, and exist without someone deciding her worth before she finished the sentence. Dignity had never been an upgrade. It was the minimum owed before anyone knew her name. If this story stayed with you, like the video and subscribe for more stories about dignity and justice. Which moment affected you most, and where are you watching from?